She thought her yoga mat would be safe in her own home. But when the HOA president stormed into her living room, the battle lines were drawn. And this was no namaste moment. Little did she know, the local EMS director was about to take this war to a whole new level. Audrey stared in disbelief as Cheryl Wilkins, the HOA president, barged into her living room, her eyes zeroing in on the yoga mat rolled out on the hardwood floor. "What do you think you're doing?" Cheryl demanded, nostrils flaring. "You know the HOA prohibits any outside activities in our common areas." Audrey held up a hand. "This asterisk is asterisk my home, Cheryl. And this is my personal yoga mat. I'm not hurting anyone." "That's where you're wrong." Cheryl's lips curled into a sneer. "Your unsightly mat is an eyesore, reducing property values for the entire neighborhood. It has to go." "You can't be serious." Audrey's jaw dropped. "Since when is my yoga practice a crime?" "Since it became an infringement on the HOA's rules and regulations." Cheryl crossed her arms. "You have 24 hours to remove that asterisk thing asterisk from your living room, or will be forced to take legal action." Audrey stared after Cheryl as she stormed out, mind racing. Asterisk legal action. Asterisk. This was her asterisk home asterisk. How dare the HOA dictate what she could do within its walls? Fuming, Audrey rolled up her mat and headed outside, determined to find allies in her fight against Cheryl's tyranny. As she marched down the sidewalk, she nearly collided with her neighbor, Jamal, the local EMS director. "Whoa, slow down there, Audrey." Jamal reached out to steady her. "What's the rush?" Audrey quickly filled him in on Cheryl's outrageous demands. To her surprise, Jamal's expression darkened. "That woman has gone too far this time," he growled. "I've been wanting to put her in her place for years. Now's my chance." Audrey blinked, taken aback by Jamal's intensity. "What are you planning to do?" Jamal's eyes gleamed with determination. "Don't worry, Audrey. I've got your back on this one." Audrey watched Jamal stride off, a newfound sense of hope blossoming in her chest. If the EMS director was on her side, maybe she stood a chance against Cheryl's bullying. The next day, Audrey rolled out her mat in the living room, defiantly refusing to comply with Cheryl's demands. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and Audrey opened it to find Jamal standing there, a mischievous grin on his face. "I've got a little surprise for you," he announced, ushering her outside. Audrey's eyes widened as she took in the sight of a large, state-of-the-art ambulance parked in front of her house. "Jamal, what is this?" "Your new ally in the fight against Cheryl," Jamal declared. "I've got the whole ES crew ready to back you up. We're going to make sure that yoga mat stays right where it is." Before Audrey could respond, the sound of an approaching car caught their attention. Cheryl's Mercedes pulled up, and the HOA president stormed out, her face a mask of fury. "Jamal, what is the meaning of this?" she shrieked, gesturing wildly at the ambulance. Jamal stepped forward, his imposing frame towering over Cheryl. "I'm here to make sure Audrey can exercise in the comfort of her own home without any interference from the HOA." Cheryl's eyes narrowed. "You have no right to be here. This is a private matter between Audrey and the association." "Oh, but I do have a right," Jamal countered. "As the EMS director, I have a responsibility to ensure the well-being of all residents in this community, and that includes protecting Audrey's right to practice yoga without harassment." Cheryl's face flushed with rage. "This is outrageous. I'll have your job for this." Jamal merely chuckled. "Go ahead and try, Cheryl. But I've got the full support of the mayor, the city council, and the local news station. They're all eager to hear about your latest abuse of power." Audrey watched the confrontation, her heart racing. Jamal had escalated the situation in a way she never could have imagined. And now, it seemed, the entire community was about to get involved in her fight against the tyrannical HOA. The tension in the air was palpable as Cheryl glared at Jamal, her face a mask of fury. Audrey held her breath, unsure of what the HOA president would do next. Suddenly, Cheryl whirled around and stormed back to her car, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement. Audrey and Jamal exchanged a puzzled glance, but before they could say anything, Cheryl turned back, her eyes blazing. "This isn't over, Jamal," she hissed. "You and your little yoga-loving friend are going to regret this." With that, she jumped into her car and peeled out of the driveway, leaving a cloud of exhaust in her wake. Audrey turned to Jamal, her heart pounding. "What do you think she's going to do?" Jamal's expression was grim. "I don't know, but we better be prepared for anything." Cheryl doesn't take kindly to being challenged, especially in front of the whole neighborhood. True to his word, the EMS crew soon arrived, setting up a makeshift yoga studio right on Audrey's front lawn. Neighbors began to gather, curious and eager to show their support for Audrey's defiance of the HOA. As the sun began to set, Audrey rolled out her mat and started her evening practice, surrounded by a small crowd of cheering onlookers. She felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that she had the backing of the community and the EMS director in her battle against Cheryl's oppressive rules. But just as Audrey was finding her rhythm, a loud commotion erupted from down the street. Audrey and Jamal exchanged a worried glance before hurrying to investigate. To their horror, they found Cheryl leading a group of armed security guards towards Audrey's house, her face twisted in a malicious grin. "Arrest that woman for trespassing on HOA property," Cheryl commanded, pointing a manicured finger at Audrey. Audrey's heart sank as the guards advanced, their faces set in grim determination. She had known Cheryl was ruthless, but this was a new low, even for the HOA president. Audrey stood frozen, her mind racing as the armed security guards closed in. Beside her, Jamal stepped forward, his broad frame blocking their path. "Stand down, Cheryl," he demanded, his voice firm and authoritative. "This is private property, and Audrey has every right to be here." Cheryl's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Not according to the HOA's bylaws, she doesn't. And as president, I have the authority to enforce those rules by any means necessary." The guards advanced, their hands resting on the holsters of their weapons. Audrey's heart pounded in her ears as she realized the full extent of Cheryl's ruthlessness. "Cheryl, this has gone too far," Jamal warned, his tone laced with barely contained fury. "If you don't call off your goons right now, I'll have the mayor and the city council down here so fast, your head will spin." For a moment, Cheryl's confidence wavered, her eyes darting back and forth between Jamal and the crowd of onlookers that had gathered. But then, her jaw tightened with determination. "Guards, arrest them both," she commanded. "I'll deal with the consequences later." The guards surged forward, their hands closing around Audrey and Jamal's arms. Audrey let out a startled cry, her mind racing with the realization that Cheryl was willing to go to any lengths to enforce her will. As she was being dragged away, Audrey caught a glimpse of her neighbors, their faces etched with shock and outrage. She knew that Cheryl had finally gone too far, and that the entire community was about to rally against her. The inside of the police car was cramped and uncomfortable, but Audrey barely noticed. Her mind was reeling, trying to process the surreal turn of events. Beside her, Jamal sat in grim silence, his jaw clenched tight. Audrey knew he was fuming, the EMS director's sense of duty and justice deeply offended by Cheryl's blatant abuse of power. As the car pulled up to the police station, a crowd of reporters and onlookers had already gathered, their cameras and microphones at the ready. Audrey felt a surge of dread. She had never wanted this kind of attention, but now it seemed unavoidable. Cheryl, flanked by her security guards, stood smirking on the steps of the station, basking in the spotlight. Audrey's blood boiled at the sight of the HOA president's self-satisfied expression. "This is a travesty of justice," Jamal bellowed as he was ushered out of the car. "Cheryl Wilkins has abused her authority and violated the civil rights of this community. The reporters swarmed around them, shouting questions and thrusting microphones in their faces. Audrey felt overwhelmed, her heart racing as she tried to make sense of the surreal situation. Suddenly, a familiar face pushed through the crowd, and Audrey felt a wave of relief. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Gonzalez, a retired civil rights lawyer. "Don't say a word, you two," Mrs. Gonzalez commanded, her eyes fierce. "I'm going to make sure Cheryl Wilkins regrets the day she ever crossed paths with us." Audrey watched in awe as Mrs. Gonzalez strode up to Cheryl, her posture radiating authority. The two women exchanged heated words, their voices rising in the chaos of the scene. "This is just the beginning, Cheryl," Mrs. Gonzalez declared, her words cutting through the din. "We're going to take you down, and we're going to do it by the book." Audrey felt a surge of hope as she realized that the community was rallying behind her. With Mrs. Gonzalez leading the charge, Cheryl's reign of terror might finally be coming to an end. As the sun rose the next morning, Audrey sat anxiously in her living room, waiting for news. The events of the previous day had been a whirlwind, leaving her feeling drained and unsettled. Just then, the doorbell rang, and Audrey opened it to find Mrs. Gonzalez standing on her doorstep, a triumphant grin on her face. "Good news, Audrey," the older woman announced. "Cheryl Wilkins has been arrested on charges of abuse of power, false imprisonment, and civil rights violations." Audrey's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're kidding. How did you manage that?" Mrs. Gonzalez chuckled. "I have a few tricks up my sleeve. I made sure the local news station was there to capture the whole debacle, and then I called in a few favors with the mayor and the district attorney." Audrey shook her head in amazement. "I can't believe it. Cheryl's reign of terror is finally over." "Not quite," Mrs. Gonzalez cautioned. "She's out on bail, and she's fighting the charges tooth and nail. But with the evidence we've gathered, I'm confident we can take her down for good." Audrey felt a mixture of relief and trepidation. While the thought of Cheryl facing justice was satisfying, she knew the battle was far from over. Just then, Jamal came striding up the sidewalk, a broad grin on his face. "Did you hear the news?" he exclaimed, pulling Audrey into a celebratory hug. "Cheryl's going down." Audrey nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude towards her neighbor. "None of this would have happened without you, Jamal. Thank you for standing up for me." Jamal waved a dismissive hand. "It was the right thing to do. And now, the whole community is rallying behind you. Cheryl's got a fight on her hands." As Audrey and Jamal exchanged excited chatter, Mrs. Gonzalez cleared her throat, her expression serious. "Now, we can't let our guard down," she warned. "Cheryl is a dangerous woman, and she's not going to go down without a fight. We need to be vigilant and prepared for anything she might try." Audrey nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. With the community behind her and Mrs. Gonzalez's legal expertise, she knew they had a fighting chance against the HOA president's tyranny. In the days that followed, the community rallied around Audrey, determined to bring Cheryl Wilkins to justice. Neighbors organized fundraisers, held rallies, and flooded social media with stories of the HOA president's abuses of power. Cheryl, however, was not one to back down without a fight. She hired a high-powered legal team and launched a relentless PR campaign, painting herself as the victim of a coordinated smear campaign by disgruntled residents. Audrey watched in dismay as Cheryl's allies on the city council and within the local media began to rally to her defense. It seemed that the HOA president's influence extended far beyond the boundaries of their neighborhood. But Mrs. Gonzalez remained undaunted, working tirelessly to build a solid case against Cheryl. She gathered sworn testimonies from neighbors, obtained security camera footage, and combed through the HOA's financial records, searching for any evidence of corruption or misuse of funds. Jamal, too, continued to lend his support, using his position as EMS director to rally the community and keep the pressure on Cheryl. He organized town hall meetings, reached out to local politicians, and even arranged for a documentary film crew to capture the ongoing saga. As the legal battle dragged on, the tension in the neighborhood reached a fever pitch. Cheryl's supporters began to harass Audrey and her allies, vandalizing their property and even making threatening phone calls. Audrey found herself constantly on edge, jumping at every unexpected noise and scrutinizing every passing car. She knew that Cheryl was a formidable opponent, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the HOA president had more tricks up her sleeve. One night, as Audrey was preparing for bed, she heard a loud crash from her living room. Heart pounding, she grabbed a baseball bat and cautiously made her way downstairs, only to find her beloved yoga mat shredded beyond recognition. Audrey let out a cry of anguish, tears streaming down her face as she realized that Cheryl had struck at the very heart of her battle. This was more than just a fight over property rights. It had become a deeply personal vendetta. The next morning, Audrey awoke to find her mailbox overflowing with messages of support from her neighbors. Word of the vandalism had spread quickly, and the community was outraged. Jamal arrived at her doorstep, his expression grim. "I'm so sorry, Audrey. We're going to get to the bottom of this, I promise." Audrey nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "I know we will, and I'm not going to let Cheryl's petty acts of vandalism deter me." Mrs. Gonzalez soon joined them, her face etched with concern. "This is a clear escalation, Audrey. Cheryl is desperate, and she's willing to stoop to new lows to intimidate you." Audrey took a deep breath. "Then we'll have to be even more vigilant. I'm not backing down, and I know the rest of the community isn't either." In the days that followed, the neighborhood banded together, setting up a neighborhood watch and installing security cameras to monitor Cheryl's movements. Jamal even arranged for an around-the-clock security detail to protect Audrey's home. Meanwhile, Mrs. Gonzalez worked tirelessly to build her case against Cheryl, uncovering evidence of financial mismanagement and abuse of power within the HOA. The local media, once sympathetic to Cheryl's cause, began to turn against her as the full scope of her misdeeds became public. As the trial date approached, Cheryl's defenses began to crumble. Witnesses came forward with damning testimony, and the evidence against her proved overwhelming. Finally, after months of bitter legal battles, the judge handed down a verdict. Cheryl Wilkins was found guilty on all charges, sentenced to 5 years in prison, and ordered to pay restitution to the community. Audrey watched the proceedings with a mixture of relief and satisfaction. The long-awaited justice had been served, and the community had emerged victorious against the tyranny of the HOA. As Cheryl was led away in handcuffs, Audrey felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She knew that the battle had been hard-fought, but in the end, the power of the community had prevailed. With a renewed sense of joy, Audrey unfurled a brand new yoga mat on her living room floor, ready to embrace the peace and tranquility that her practice had always brought her. This time, she knew, no one would dare to take it away.